In the heart of a small town nestled among the rolling hills, there stood a high school with a football team that was the pride of the community. Among the team's star players was Jake Reynolds, a talented quarterback with dreams of leading his team to victory on the field. With his athletic prowess and natural leadership, Jake had become the face of the football team, revered by his teammates and adored by fans. But, as the season wore on, Jake began to notice strange occurrences happening both on and off the field, occurrences that filled him with a sense of unease. It started with whispers in the locker room, voices that seemed to come from nowhere and yet everywhere at once. Then there were the strange dreams that plagued Jake's sleep, nightmares of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes gleaming with malice. But Jake brushed off the incidents as nothing more than pre-game jitters, eager to focus on leading his team to victory. Little did he know that the darkness that lurked within the shadows was far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. One fateful Friday night, under the glare of the stadium lights, Jake and his teammates prepared to face off against their biggest rivals in the championship game. The air crackled with anticipation as the crowd cheered them on, their voices echoing through the night like a chorus of ghosts. As the game wore on, Jake felt a sense of unease gnawing at his insides, a sense that he was being watched, not just by the opposing team, but by something far more sinister. And then, in the final moments of the game, disaster struck. With victory within their grasp, Jake dropped back to pass, only to feel a sudden chill run down his spine, a chill that froze him in place as he watched the ball slip through his fingers and into the waiting arms of the opposing team. In an instant, the cheers of the crowd turned to jeers, and Jake felt a wave of shame wash over him as he stumbled off the field, defeated and demoralized. Little did he know that the events of that night were only the beginning of his descent into darkness. As the days turned into weeks, Jake found himself plagued by nightmares of shadowy figures stalking him through the darkness, their eyes gleaming with malice. He tried to shake off the visions, telling himself that they were nothing more than figments of his imagination, but the feeling of dread only grew stronger with each passing day. And then, one night, as Jake lay alone in his room, he heard a soft tapping at the window. Startled, he sat up in bed and peered out into the darkness, but there was nothing there, just the empty streets and the distant sound of crickets chirping in the night. With a sense of unease gnawing at his insides, Jake tried to shake off the feeling and go back to sleep, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the sense of impending doom that hung over him like a dark cloud. And then, as he lay in bed, paralyzed with fear, he heard a voice that seemed to come from nowhere and yet everywhere at once. "Jake," the voice whispered, its words filled with malice. "You cannot escape us, we are always watching." With a cry of terror, Jake leapt out of bed and raced to the window, throwing it open and peering out into the darkness. But there was no one there, just the empty streets and the cold, empty night. And as he stood alone in the darkness, Jake realized with a sinking feeling that the nightmares he had been experiencing were not just figments of his imagination, that they were something far more sinister, something that lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim him as its own. Determined to confront the darkness that haunted him, Jake returned to the football field, the place where it had all begun. With a sense of determination burning in his heart, he faced off against the shadows that lurked within the stadium, his fists clenched and his jaw set in determination. But, as he searched the empty stands and the deserted field, he realized with a sinking feeling that the darkness was nowhere to be found, that it had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only echoes of its presence. With a sense of frustration gnawing at his insides, Jake turned to leave the stadium, his mind reeling with unanswered questions. What had happened to the darkness that had haunted him for so long? And why had it chosen to disappear now, when he was finally ready to confront it? And then, as he reached the exit, he heard a soft whisper in the darkness, a whisper that sent shivers down his spine and filled him with a sense of dread. "We'll be back, Jake," the whisper said, its words filled with malice. "We'll always be watching." With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, Jake realized that the darkness that had haunted him was far from gone, that it was merely biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And as he stepped out into the night, he knew that his battle against the shadows was far from over, that he would have to confront the darkness that lurked within the shadows, and that only then would he be able to find peace.